Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just back in with another sequence of the end times. This one I came across while doing my live stream yesterday, so I thought I would record it. Matthew 26, 57 to 68. This one's coded, encoded, but it's amazing, that even within the words themselves, just little, phrases here and there, if you piece them together, they honor the sequence as well. That's why I don't think I'll ever be able to find all of them. I'm assuming there'll be like lots, even in the hundreds that I found. Matthew 26, 57 to 68. Then those who had, just to reiterate what the sequence is, it's salvation. It's a time of 1,260 days where the two witnesses will be prophesying in America. And then the gospel is going to be preached during that time. Christ returning with his elect, and then the kingdom of heaven being established. And we see that here. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. So in 57, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. And it references Jesus. So that is coded language for salvation. Verse 58, and Peter was following him at a distance. Then Peter obviously is of the elect too. As far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. And so this is, again, coded language in the end times. And then these guards, the 144,000, are metaphorically Christ's guards. He doesn't need protection, but that's what they represent. Verse 60, okay, just skipping down to the next part. Now we're going to look for references for two witnesses, and we see that. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. But now, just in the end times, it's referencing witnesses, okay? And listen to this. And at last, two came forward. So now we have a reference to, in this case, false witnesses. In the last days, it's true witnesses, Moses and Elijah. At last, two came forward. So two and witnesses is there. This man said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days. So these two witnesses, their body's going to be killed, and then they're going to be rebuilt in 3.5 days. They're going to come back to life, according to Revelation 11. And so, again, in the last days, that's what's going to happen. So there we have references to the two witnesses using coded language. And then in verse 62, what is it that these men testify against you? So in the last days, they're going to be testifying for God. And then this is, like I said, the time when the gospel is going to be preached worldwide. So that's amazing. That's referencing the Great Tribulation period. And so now we're going to get a reference to Christ returning with his elect. Verse 64, Jesus said to him, you have said so, but I tell you from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. And so perfectly placed now, we have a reference to Christ returning, with power. And this is going to be to destroy everybody with the mark of the beast. And that's what we're going to read in this next section. Then verse 65, then the high priest tore his robes and said, he has uttered blasphemy. What further witnesses do we need? You have now heard his blasphemy. And so now this, in the last days, is going to represent the world, earthly structures fighting against God. Verse 66, what is your judgment? They answered, he deserves death. So that's in verse 66. In the last days, everybody with the mark of the beast, 666, their judgment is going to be death. By Christ returning with his elect, with power and coming in the clouds of heaven in these so-called UFOs. Then they spit in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, prophesy to us, you Christ, who is it that struck you? They're mocking him. And so now in the last days, they've recruited the entire earth to fight against God. And so, just know that. And that's in verse 68, which, if you add that together, that's 14. Prophesy to us, okay? Who is it that struck you? And so in the last days, all of this is reversed. God's elect are going to be striking people, from these so-called UFOs. And this whole thing is going to get flipped, all eyes will see him, even those who pierced him, which is this group were involved in that. They're going to be back here on this earth to be destroyed. Like it said in verse 66, that's his judgment and they'll deserve death. And the death that they experience here is going to be body and soul. Because that's the fire that's able to do that from these so-called UFOs. Or the lake of fire in America. So again, even like using slightly coded language, I would say not excessively coded language. Even in these few verses here in Matthew 26, we see the sequence of the end times. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.